To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Introduction. Gabriel Franklin had always prided himself on being a good judge of character. As a cybersecurity specialist for a major tech firm, he'd spent years analyzing patterns, detecting threats, and staying 3 steps ahead of potential dangers. Yet as he watched his 6-year-old son Tommy chase butterflies across their suburban lawn while his wife Charlotte tended to her rose garden, he felt completely at peace with his world. That peace shattered when Stan Hawkins knocked on their door. The man was in his late 60s, with steel-gray hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades in law enforcement. His handshake was firm, his smile warm, but Gabriel noticed something else. The way Stan's eyes immediately tracked past him to where Charlotte was playing with Tommy in the backyard. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Gabriel said, stepping out onto the porch. "I'm Gabriel Franklin. That's my wife Charlotte and our son Tommy." Stan's expression shifted subtly, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Stan Hawkins just moved in across the street. Retired LAPD, 32 years on the force. They made small talk about the neighborhood, the local schools, the best places to grab coffee. But Gabriel noticed Stan's attention kept drifting to Charlotte, who was now teaching Tommy how to properly water the flowers. There was something in the older man's expression that Gabriel couldn't quite place. Not attraction, but recognition. And beneath that, something that looked almost like fear. "Beautiful family you have there," Stan said, his voice carrying an odd tension. "Thank you. Charlotte's amazing with Tommy. She used to work with children before we moved here." Gabriel smiled proudly. "She's got such a natural way with kids." Stan's face went pale. He fumbled in his jacket pocket, pulling out a worn leather wallet. For a moment, Gabriel thought the man was going to show him pictures of his own grandchildren. Instead, Stan's fingers trembled slightly as he extracted something else entirely. "I'm sorry to ask this," Stan said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "But what was your wife's maiden name?" The question caught Gabriel off guard. "That's an odd thing to ask someone you just met. Please." There was an urgency in Stan's voice that made Gabriel's skin crawl. "It's important." Gabriel studied the older man's face, noting the way perspiration had begun to bead on his forehead despite the mild evening air. Something was wrong here, deeply wrong, but Gabriel couldn't quite put his finger on what. "Burton," he said finally. "Charlotte Burton." The effect was immediate and devastating. Stan's face drained of all color, and he actually took a step backward, his hand instinctively moving toward where his service weapon would have been if he were still on duty. "Dear God," Stan whispered. "What's wrong?" Gabriel demanded, alarm bells going off in his head. Stan glanced around nervously, then leaned in close. His breath smelled of coffee and barely contained panic. "Leave this neighborhood with your son. Tonight if you can manage it. Do not tell her why." "What the hell are you talking about?" Instead of answering, Stan pressed something into Gabriel's hand. A folded, yellowed newspaper clipping that looked like it had been carried in a wallet for years. The paper was soft with age and handling, the creases deep and permanent. "Read this when you're alone," Stan said. "When you do, you'll understand why I've been carrying it for 15 years. Why I've been looking for her for 15 years. Gabriel stared at the clipping, his heart beginning to pound. "Looking for who?" "Your wife." Stan's voice was hollow, though I doubt that's really her name anymore. From the backyard came the sound of Charlotte's laughter as she chased Tommy around the garden, the picture of maternal bliss. But now, with Stan's words echoing in his ears, that laughter took on a different quality entirely. "I have to go," Stan said abruptly. "But Gabriel, whatever you do, don't let her know that you know. And don't let her be alone with your son." Before Gabriel could respond, Stan was walking quickly back across the street, leaving Gabriel standing on his porch with a piece of paper that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Chapter 2. The Truth Unveiled. Gabriel waited until Charlotte was in the shower before unfolding the newspaper clipping. His hands shook as he smoothed it out on his desk in the home office, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The headline read, "Family of 4 found murdered, children still missing." Below it was a grainy photograph of a crime scene, and beneath that, a much clearer photo of 2 suspects. One was a man Gabriel didn't recognize, tall, thin, with dark hair and cold eyes. But the other was unmistakably his wife. The photo was 15 years old, and she'd been younger then, with shorter hair and different features around the eyes. But it was Charlotte. No question about it. Gabriel's vision blurred as he read the article. The Hendricks family in Los Angeles had been found dead in their home. Mother, father, teenage daughter. But their 6-year-old son and 4-year-old daughter were missing. The primary suspects were Douglas Burton and his sister, Charlotte Burton, who had been operating a fake charity that targeted wealthy families with young children. The article detailed how the siblings would identify families with assets, befriend them through their charity work, then break into homes to rob them. When the Hendricks family came home unexpectedly during the robbery, they'd been killed. The children had vanished, presumably taken by the Burtons. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text from Stan. "Meet me at Riverside Park in 20 minutes. Come alone. Tell her you're going for a late jog." Gabriel's mind raced as he tucked the clipping into his phone case. Everything about his marriage suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. Charlotte's reluctance to talk about her past, her insistence that her family was dead, her knowledge of security systems that had always impressed him. Her way with children. Jesus Christ, her way with children. "Honey." Charlotte's voice drifted from upstairs. "Where are you?" "Just checking some work emails." Gabriel called back, forcing his voice to sound normal. "I think I'm going to go for a quick run." "This late?" "Couldn't sleep anyway. The new neighbor kind of threw me off my routine." There was a pause. What did he want? Nothing important. Just introducing himself. Gabriel grabbed his running gear and headed out, his mind churning with horrific possibilities. If Charlotte was really the woman in that newspaper clipping, then everything about their relationship was a lie. Their meeting at the coffee shop 3 years ago, their whirlwind romance, even Tommy. God, was Tommy even his son? Stan was waiting on a bench near the pond, his posture tense and alert. Even in retirement, the cop in him was clearly operating at full capacity. "You read it," Stan said as Gabriel approached. It wasn't a question. "That's really her? I've been chasing the Burton siblings for 15 years. Douglas and Charlotte. They're not really siblings. They're lovers, partners in crime. Charlotte's real name is Charlotte Steele. She's wanted in connection with 3 family murders and 11 missing children." Gabriel sat down heavily on the bench, his legs suddenly unable to support him. 11 children? That we know of. Their MO was always the same. Target wealthy families through charity work, learn their routines, break in to rob them. If the families came home unexpectedly, Stan's voice trailed off. The children, sold, to people who don't ask questions. Stan's face was grim. "We found evidence of a trafficking network, but never enough to prove it. The Burton siblings always stayed one step ahead of us." Gabriel thought about Tommy, about how Charlotte sometimes looked at him with an expression he'd never been able to quite decipher, about how she'd insisted on homeschooling him, keeping him isolated from other children and parents. "Why didn't you arrest her? Why warn me instead?" "Because I need your help." Stan turned to face him fully. "I'm retired, Gabriel. I have no authority anymore. If I call this in through official channels, she'll disappear again. She's done it before. New identity, new city, new victim. Victim, you." Stan's voice was brutal in its honesty. "Think about how you met her. Think about how quickly things moved. Think about whether you've ever actually seen any documentation proving Tommy is your biological son." Gabriel's world tilted. "You're saying?" "I'm saying Charlotte Steele is very good at finding successful men who would make good fathers and providers. She's been planning this for years, Gabriel. You, Tommy, this whole suburban life, it's all part of a long con." "But Tommy is..." "How old is he?" 6. The Hendricks boy was 6 when he disappeared. Stan let that sink in. "I'm not saying Tommy is the Hendricks child, but I am saying Charlotte has a very specific type she targets." Gabriel felt sick. "What do you want me to do?" "Help me prove who she really is. And more importantly, help me save those children." Stan's eyes were hard. "Because I guarantee you, Gabriel, she's not done. She never is." Chapter 3. The masquerade begins to crumble. Gabriel returned home to find Charlotte waiting in the kitchen, a cup of tea steaming in her hands, and an expression on her face that he'd never seen before. It wasn't the warm, loving look of the woman he'd married. It was calculating, predatory. "How was your run?" she asked. "Good. Needed to clear my head." Gabriel went to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water, buying himself time to think. "The new neighbor really threw me off. Something about him seemed familiar." "Oh." Charlotte's voice was carefully casual, but Gabriel caught the slight tensing of her shoulders. What did he say his name was? Stan Hawkins. Retired LAPD. The teacup rattled against the saucer as Charlotte set it down, just a tiny tremor that most people would have missed. But Gabriel was watching for it now, analyzing every micro-expression, every tell. Did he mention what part of LA he worked? She asked. Not specifically. What? No reason. Just curious. Charlotte stood and moved to the sink, but Gabriel noticed she positioned herself so she could see both him and the stairs leading to Tommy's room. Gabriel, I've been thinking we should take a vacation. Maybe drive up to Oregon, see the coast. That sounds nice. When were you thinking? Tomorrow. Gabriel nearly choked on his water. Tomorrow? That's pretty sudden. I know, but I've been feeling restless lately. Like we need a change of scenery. Charlotte turned to face him, and for just a moment, her mask slipped entirely. The woman looking at him wasn't his loving wife. She was a stranger. A dangerous stranger. We could leave first thing in the morning. Make it an adventure. What about my work? Tommy's activities. You can work remotely. And Tommy could use a break from his routine. Her voice carried an edge now, barely controlled. I really think we should go, Gabriel. I have a strong feeling about it. Gabriel's phone buzzed. A text from Stan. She knows something's wrong. Be careful. I should probably give my boss a heads up if we're leaving tomorrow, Gabriel said. Let me just send a quick email. Of course. I'll go check on Tommy. Gabriel watched Charlotte head upstairs, then quickly typed a response to Stan. She wants to leave town tomorrow morning. What do I do? The response came back immediately. Stall her. I'm contacting some old colleagues who might help unofficially. Do not let her take Tommy anywhere alone. Gabriel heard Charlotte's footsteps on the stairs and quickly put his phone away. She appeared in the doorway with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Tommy's fast asleep. Poor little guy was exhausted from all that playing outside. She moved closer to Gabriel, her hand trailing along his arm. You know, we don't have to wait until tomorrow. We could leave tonight. Tonight? Charlotte, that's crazy. It's almost 11 o'clock. Kids love late-night adventures. We could drive through the night, stop at one of those little motels along the coast. Tommy would think it was so exciting. Gabriel's skin crawled. Every instinct was screaming at him to grab Tommy and run, but he forced himself to remain calm. What's the rush? Oregon will still be there tomorrow. For just a moment, Charlotte's expression darkened. There's no rush. I just think it would be safer. Safer. You know how I worry. About crime, about strangers in the neighborhood. Her smile was back, but it was razor-sharp now. New neighbors especially. You never know what kind of people they really are. Gabriel's phone buzzed again. Charlotte's eyes immediately flicked to it. Who's texting you so late? She asked. Probably just work spam. Gabriel made a show of ignoring the phone. You're right about the vacation, though. I think we could all use some time away. But let's do it right. Pack properly, make reservations, plan some fun stops along the way. I suppose you're right. Charlotte's voice was tight. Well, I should get to bed then. Big day of planning tomorrow. She kissed his cheek, and Gabriel had to fight not to recoil. Her lips felt cold against his skin. After she went upstairs, Gabriel checked his phone. Stan's message was brief. Found Douglas Burton. He's in town. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon. Gabriel quietly locked all the doors and windows, then settled into the living room chair, where he could see both the front door and the stairs. He wasn't going to sleep tonight. He couldn't risk it. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. Gabriel's head snapped up, listening intently. The sound came again, and he realized it was coming from Tommy's room. Moving silently, Gabriel crept up the stairs. Tommy's door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, he could see Charlotte sitting on the edge of their son's bed, stroking his hair. She was whispering something Gabriel couldn't quite make out. As he moved closer, he caught fragments. Have to be very quiet. Special trip? Just like we practiced? Gabriel's blood turned to ice. Charlotte was preparing Tommy for something, and given everything he'd learned tonight, Gabriel was certain it wasn't a family vacation to Oregon. Chapter 4. The Web Unravels. Gabriel didn't sleep. Instead, he spent the night researching everything he could find about Charlotte Burton and Douglas Burton online. What he discovered made his worst fears seem optimistic. The Burton siblings had left a trail of devastation across 3 states over the past 15 years. The newspaper clipping Stan had shown him was just the beginning. There were 7 other cases, families targeted, children missing, bodies found weeks later. The children were never recovered. At 5 a.m., as dawn was breaking, Gabriel heard movement upstairs. Charlotte was awake, moving around with unusual urgency. He heard her in Tommy's room again, then in their bedroom, then the guest room. She was packing. His phone buzzed with a call from Stan. "We need to move fast," Stan said without preamble. "I tracked down Detective Maria Santos. She worked the Burton case with me before I retired. She's agreed to help unofficially, but we need evidence. Hard evidence that Charlotte is who we think she is." "Like what?" "Fingerprints, DNA, something that links her to the crimes. And we need to find Douglas. I lost his trail last night." Gabriel heard footsteps on the stairs. "I have to go." "She's coming down." Charlotte appeared in the kitchen fully dressed, with 2 large suitcases and Tommy's backpack. "Good morning, honey. I couldn't sleep, so I went ahead and packed for our trip." "You packed for me?" "Just basics. We can buy anything else we need on the road." She set Tommy's backpack on the counter, and Gabriel noticed it was bulging with more than just clothes and toys. "I thought we'd hit the road by 7. Beat the traffic." "What about breakfast?" "Tommy's morning routine. We'll stop somewhere fun for breakfast. Tommy loves McDonald's." Charlotte moved toward the stairs. "I'll go wake him up." "Actually," Gabriel said quickly, "let me get him. You know how cranky he gets when you wake him up too early." Charlotte paused, her hand on the banister. "That's sweet of you, but I think I should." "No, really. Let me handle it." Gabriel stepped between her and the stairs. "You've done so much already with the packing." For a moment, they stared at each other, and Gabriel saw something flicker across Charlotte's face. Calculation, then resignation, then something much darker. "Of course," she said finally. "You're such a good father, Gabriel." Gabriel went upstairs, his heart pounding. In Tommy's room, he found his son still fast asleep, looking innocent and vulnerable in his race car pajamas. Gabriel gently shook him awake. "Hey, buddy. We need to talk, okay?" Very quietly. Tommy rubbed his eyes. "Are we going on the trip Mom told me about?" Gabriel's blood chilled. "What trip did Mom tell you about?" "The special one. She said we might have to go very fast, and I shouldn't ask questions, and I should do exactly what she says." Tommy looked confused. "She seemed different, Dad. Scared, maybe." Gabriel knelt beside the bed. "Tommy, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Something's wrong, and we might need to leave here quickly, but not with Mom. Can you be very brave for me?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "I want you to get dressed, but leave your backpack here. Can you do that without making any noise?" As Tommy quietly pulled on clothes, Gabriel texted Stan, "Need immediate backup. She's planning to take Tommy this morning. I think Douglas is coming." The response was immediate. "Maria's on her way. Keep them in the house until she arrives." Gabriel helped Tommy with his shoes, then crept to the window overlooking the front yard. A black sedan he'd never seen before was parked across the street, and Gabriel could see a figure in the driver's seat. As he watched, the figure raised a phone to his ear. Downstairs, Gabriel heard Charlotte's phone ring. "Yes," he heard her say. "He's suspicious. We need to move now." Gabriel's heart hammered against his ribs. Time was up. "Tommy," he whispered, "we're going to play a game, okay? We're going to sneak out of the house without Mom knowing, like we're secret agents." "Is Mom the bad guy in this game?" Gabriel met his son's eyes, seeing intelligence there that broke his heart. "Yes, buddy. I think she might be." They crept toward the back stairs, but as they reached the landing, Charlotte's voice stopped them cold. "Gabriel? Tommy, come down here, please. We have a visitor." Gabriel peered around the corner and saw Charlotte standing in the living room. Next to her was a tall, thin man with dark hair and cold eyes. The man from the newspaper photo. Douglas Burton. "Hello, Gabriel," Douglas said, his voice carrying a slight accent Gabriel couldn't place. "Charlotte's told me so much about you." Gabriel pushed Tommy behind him, his mind racing through options. The back door was too far. The windows were too high, and Douglas was positioned perfectly to block any escape route. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Gabriel said. "Oh, there's no misunderstanding." Douglas smiled, and Gabriel saw that his teeth were stained yellow. "We know exactly who you are, Gabriel Franklin, just like we knew who the Hendricks family was, and the Johnsons before them, and the Matthews before them." Charlotte moved closer to the stairs, cutting off that escape route. "Gabriel, bring Tommy down here." "Now." "I don't think so." Douglas reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. "I wasn't really asking." Chapter 5. The hunter becomes the hunted. Gabriel's cybersecurity training had taught him to think 3 moves ahead, to anticipate system vulnerabilities before they could be exploited. Now, faced with armed killers in his own home, those same analytical skills kicked into overdrive. "Okay," Gabriel said, raising his hands. "We're coming down." But as he descended the stairs with Tommy behind him, Gabriel's eyes were cataloging everything. The position of furniture, the distance to windows, the fact that Douglas was holding the gun in his non-dominant hand based on how he was positioned. Most importantly, Gabriel noticed that Charlotte kept glancing toward the front window, obviously watching for something, which meant they were expecting more company. "Sit down," Douglas ordered, gesturing toward the couch with the gun. Gabriel sat, pulling Tommy close to him. "What do you want?" "What we've always wanted," Charlotte said. "A good life. A safe life. Unfortunately, your nosy neighbor has complicated things. Stan doesn't know anything." "Stan Hawkins," Douglas said, pronouncing the name like it tasted bad, "has been a thorn in our side for 15 years. He almost caught us in Sacramento. Almost caught us in Phoenix. Now he's here, and he's been asking questions." Charlotte moved to the window, peering through the blinds. "Where is he, anyway? I would have expected him to come charging over here by now." Gabriel's phone, which he'd left on the coffee table, suddenly buzzed with a text. Charlotte grabbed it before he could react. "FBI is 20 minutes out," she read aloud. "Keep them talking." Charlotte looked up at Douglas. "He's called in federal backup." Douglas swore viciously. "We need to move. Now." "What about Hawkins?" "We'll deal with him later. Right now, we get the kid and disappear." Gabriel felt Tommy trembling against him. "You're not taking my son anywhere." "Your son?" Charlotte laughed, and the sound was nothing like the warm laughter Gabriel had fallen in love with. "Gabriel, honey, Tommy isn't your son." The words hit Gabriel like a physical blow. "What? Did you really think it was a coincidence that we met right after I moved to town? That I was this perfect woman who just happened to love everything you loved?" Charlotte's mask was completely off now, revealing something predatory underneath. "I spent 6 months researching you before we ever accidentally bumped into each other at that coffee shop. But the DNA test was faked. It's amazing what you can do with a little chemistry knowledge and access to your toothbrush." Charlotte smiled cruelly. "Tommy is Kyle Hendricks. We've been grooming him for sale to a very wealthy client who wanted a child with specific characteristics." Gabriel looked down at Tommy, at Kyle, and saw his own shock and confusion reflected in the boy's eyes. But beneath that, Gabriel saw something else: trust. Despite everything that was happening, this child trusted him. "The other children?" Gabriel asked. "Sold to the highest bidders. Rich people who can't have children of their own, or who have specific tastes." Douglas checked his watch. "We need to go. Charlotte, get the van." "There's no van out there," Gabriel said. "Just a sedan." Douglas smiled coldly. "Check again." Gabriel looked toward the window and saw a white van pulling into their driveway. His blood ran cold as he realized how thoroughly this had been planned. But then he heard something that made his heart leap, the distant sound of sirens. "They're early," Charlotte hissed. Douglas's face darkened. "Change of plans. We leave through the back. Use the woods behind the house." "What about our client?" "He's expecting delivery today. We'll figure something out. Move." Gabriel stood up as Douglas gestured with the gun, but as they headed toward the back door, he deliberately stumbled, knocking over a side table and sending a lamp crashing to the floor. "Clumsy," Douglas snarled, but Gabriel had accomplished what he wanted. The delay gave him time to glimpse the police cars turning onto their street through the front window. They emerged into the backyard, and Gabriel saw their escape route, a wooded area that backed up to a creek. If Charlotte and Douglas got Tommy into those woods, the police might never find them in time. But Gabriel had one advantage his captors didn't know about. He'd grown up in these woods. He'd spent his childhood exploring every trail, every hiding spot, every shortcut. If he could somehow get Tommy away from them once they were in the trees. "Move faster," Douglas ordered, prodding Gabriel with the gun. As they approached the tree line, Gabriel heard shouting from the front of the house. The police had arrived, but they were storming an empty house. "This way," Charlotte said, leading them onto a barely visible trail. Gabriel smiled grimly. She was taking them deeper into the woods, further from help, but also onto terrain where Gabriel had every advantage. It was time to turn the tables. Chapter 6. Into the Woods. The forest behind Gabriel's house was dense with old-growth trees and thick undergrowth, crisscrossed with hiking trails that most people never bothered to explore. But Gabriel had been hiking these paths since he was Tommy's age, and he knew something Charlotte and Douglas didn't. The trail they were following led to a dead end at a steep ravine. "This way," Charlotte urged, pushing through the brush. "The van is parked at the other end of these woods." Gabriel caught Tommy's eye and pointed subtly to the left, where Gabriel knew a hidden path branched off from the main trail. Tommy nodded almost imperceptibly. Behind them, Gabriel could hear the police searching the house, their voices growing fainter as Charlotte led them deeper into the woods. Douglas kept the gun trained on Gabriel's back, but Gabriel noticed the man was breathing hard, not used to physical exertion. "How much further?" Douglas wheezed. "Not far," Charlotte replied, but Gabriel heard uncertainty in her voice. She was lost. "Perfect. Actually," Gabriel said, "I think you missed a turn back there. This trail doesn't go where you think it does." Charlotte spun around. "What are you talking about?" "These woods. I've been hiking them for 20 years. You're leading us toward Miller's Ravine. It's a 40-foot drop to rocks at the bottom." Douglas grabbed Gabriel's arm. "Is he telling the truth?" Charlotte's face was flushed with exertion and growing panic. "How would I know? I've never been back here before." "Then why did you tell me there was a van waiting?" "Because that's what you told me to say." Gabriel watched the growing argument between his captors with satisfaction. Stress was making them sloppy, turning them against each other. "The trail you want is back that way," Gabriel said helpfully. "But it's narrow, and you'll have to go single file." Douglas looked around nervously. "I don't like this. We should go back." "We can't go back," Charlotte snapped. "The police are at the house." While they argued, Gabriel caught Tommy's attention again and mouthed "run" while pointing toward their escape route. Tommy looked terrified but nodded. Gabriel waited for the perfect moment, when Charlotte turned to scan the path ahead and Douglas was distracted by a sound in the bushes. Then he grabbed Tommy's hand and dove sideways into the thick undergrowth. "Go, go, go," Gabriel whispered as they crashed through the brush. Behind them, he heard Douglas shouting and Charlotte screaming orders. The hidden path was barely wide enough for them to move single file, overgrown with thorns and brambles that tore at their clothes. But Gabriel knew where he was going. An old hunting cabin that had been abandoned for years, hidden in a grove of pine trees about half a mile from the main trail. "I can't run anymore," Tommy gasped. Gabriel swept the boy up in his arms and kept moving, his lungs burning with the effort. Behind them, he could hear their pursuers crashing through the woods, getting closer. The cabin appeared through the trees like a miracle, a small, weathered structure with boarded windows and a door hanging off its hinges. Gabriel pushed inside and set Tommy down. "Stay quiet," he whispered, then moved to the window to peer through a gap between the boards. Charlotte and Douglas emerged from the tree line about 50 yards away, both looking frustrated and out of breath. Douglas was waving the gun around wildly, scanning the forest. "They couldn't have gotten far," Douglas panted. "Then where are they?" Charlotte snapped back. Gabriel watched as they split up, each taking a different direction. This was his chance. He knew these woods better than they did, and he knew something else. There was an old ranger station about a mile north of here, and it had a working radio. "Tommy," Gabriel whispered, "we're going to play that secret agent game again, okay? We need to get to the ranger station and call for help. What about the bad guys? We're going to outsmart them." Gabriel led Tommy out the back of the cabin and onto another hidden trail, this one so overgrown it was almost invisible. They moved carefully, Gabriel stopping frequently to listen for sounds of pursuit. 20 minutes later, they reached the ranger station, a small wooden building with a radio tower. Gabriel tried the door and found it unlocked. The radio equipment was old but functional. Gabriel grabbed the microphone and tuned to the emergency frequency. "This is Gabriel Franklin. I'm at the old ranger station in Millfield Woods with a kidnapped child. We're being pursued by armed suspects Charlotte Burton and Douglas Burton, wanted in connection with multiple child abductions and murders. We need immediate assistance." The response was immediate. "Gabriel, this is Detective Santos with the FBI. We've been looking for you. Stay where you are. We have teams moving into the woods from 3 directions." Gabriel felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. Through the window, he saw movement in the trees. Charlotte had found them. "They're here," Gabriel said into the radio. "Help is 2 minutes away." Get somewhere defensible and hold on. Gabriel looked around the small ranger station. There was only one door, and the windows were too small to escape through. They were trapped. Outside, Charlotte called out, "Gabriel, I know you're in there. Send Tommy out, and I'll let you live." Gabriel checked the station's emergency supplies and found what he was looking for, a flare gun and a first aid kit. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. "I'm going to protect you," he told Tommy. "No matter what happens." The boy looked up at him with complete trust. "I know you will, Dad." "Dad." The word hit Gabriel like a thunderbolt. This child might not be his biological son, but he was Gabriel's son in every way that mattered. And Gabriel was going to make sure he stayed that way. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The ranger station's radio crackled with updates as FBI teams closed in from multiple directions, but Gabriel knew Charlotte and Douglas wouldn't wait for backup to arrive. Through the window, he could see them positioning themselves for an assault on the small building. "Gabriel," Charlotte's voice carried across the clearing, "you're only making this harder on yourself. Send the boy out, and we'll all walk away from this." Gabriel checked the flare gun, one shot. The first aid kit yielded some gauze and medical tape, but nothing that would help in a fight. He moved Tommy to the corner farthest from the door and windows. "Whatever happens, you stay down and stay quiet," Gabriel whispered. "The good guys are coming, but we need to hold on until they get here." "I'm scared," Tommy admitted. "Me too, buddy. But being scared is okay. It means we're paying attention." A crash outside made Gabriel spin toward the window. Douglas was using a fallen branch to break through the underbrush, creating a clear path to the station's front door. Charlotte had moved to the side window, trying to peer through the gaps in the boards. Gabriel made a decision. Passive defense wasn't going to work. He needed to take the initiative. "Listen to me," he called out. "I know who you really are. I know about the Hendricks family, the missing children, all of it. The FBI is already here. Your best chance is to surrender now." "The FBI?" Douglas laughed, but Gabriel heard nervousness underneath. "You're bluffing." "Detective Maria Santos, retired LAPD Stan Hawkins. They've been building a case against you for years. You're done." Silence from outside. Gabriel used the moment to position himself behind an overturned desk that would provide some cover. Then Charlotte's voice, different now, cold and calculating. "You know what, Gabriel? You're right. We are done, but we're taking the boy with us." The first shot shattered the window, sending glass and splinters flying. Gabriel pulled Tommy further behind the desk as Douglas kicked in the door. "Last chance, Gabriel." Gabriel raised the flare gun and waited. When Douglas stepped fully into the doorway, silhouetted against the light, Gabriel fired. The flare caught Douglas square in the chest, igniting his shirt and sending him stumbling backward, screaming and batting at the flames. The gun flew from his hands and clattered across the floor. Gabriel lunged for the weapon, but Charlotte was faster, diving through the window opening and snatching it up. "That was a mistake," she snarled, leveling the gun at Gabriel. But before she could fire, the sound of helicopters filled the air, and through the broken window came the amplified voice of FBI agents. "Charlotte Burton, Douglas Burton, you are surrounded. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands visible." Charlotte's head snapped toward the window, and Gabriel saw his chance. He launched himself at her, tackling her around the waist, and sending them both crashing into the wall. The gun went off, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling. Gabriel and Charlotte struggled for control of the weapon, rolling across the floor of the small station. Gabriel was bigger and stronger, but Charlotte fought with the desperation of someone who knew her life was over if she was captured. She raked her fingernails across his face, trying to get at his eyes. "You don't understand," she hissed as they grappled. "That boy is worth $2 million to our client. We're not giving that up. His name is Tommy." Gabriel growled back, finally managing to pin her wrist against the floor. "And he's my son. Your son." Charlotte laughed bitterly. "He's not even Kyle Hendricks. You want to know the truth? That boy is one of 11 children we've taken over the years. We kept him because he was the right age, the right look for you. We molded him into the perfect son for the perfect mark." Gabriel felt his world tilt. "You're lying. His real name is Michael Patterson. We took him from a park in Denver when he was 2 years old. His real parents spent everything they had looking for him before they finally gave up." Gabriel's grip on Charlotte's wrist loosened as shock hit him. In that moment of hesitation, Charlotte broke free and scrambled for the gun. But she never reached it. The station door exploded inward as FBI agents in tactical gear flooded the room. Charlotte found herself facing 5 assault rifles, while outside, Gabriel could hear Douglas screaming as paramedics treated his burns. "Charlotte Burton," Detective Santos said, stepping into the room with her weapon drawn. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, murder, and child trafficking." As the agents handcuffed Charlotte, Gabriel pulled Tommy, Michael, whoever he was, into his arms. "Is it over?" the boy whispered. Gabriel looked down at this child who had called him dad, who had trusted him to protect him, who had been through horrors no child should ever experience. "It's over," Gabriel said firmly. "You're safe now." Chapter 8. Truth and Consequences. The FBI field office in downtown was buzzing with activity as agents processed the biggest break in a 15-year-old case. Gabriel sat in a conference room with Tommy. He couldn't think of the boy by any other name, while Detective Santos and Agent Mark Rodriguez went through their statements for the 3rd time. "You did good out there," Agent Rodriguez said, closing his notebook. "Your quick thinking probably saved a lot of lives." Through the conference room window, Gabriel could see Charlotte being led down the hallway in shackles, flanked by federal marshals. She looked nothing like the woman he'd married. The mask had completely fallen away, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. "What happens to her now?" Gabriel asked. "She'll be charged federally for the kidnapping and trafficking crimes, but several states want to prosecute her for murder as well," Detective Santos explained. "She's looking at life without parole, minimum. Douglas Burton is cooperating, giving us information about their network in exchange for avoiding the death penalty." Gabriel's arm tightened around Tommy, who had barely spoken since the rescue. "And Tommy, that's complicated." Agent Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Detective Santos. "We've confirmed that the boy you know as Tommy is actually Michael Patterson, abducted from a park in Denver 5 years ago." 5 years ago? But he's been with Charlotte for 3 years, since he was 3 years old. Before that, he was held by other members of their trafficking network. Detective Santos's voice was gentle but firm. "Gabriel, Michael's biological parents are alive. They've been notified, and they're flying here tonight." Gabriel felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "So I just lose him?" "It's not that simple. Michael has been through severe trauma. He's been conditioned to think of you as his father, and separating him abruptly could cause additional psychological damage." Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "We're recommending a gradual transition with extensive counseling for everyone involved." Tommy looked up at Gabriel with eyes that had seen far too much. "Am I really not your son?" Gabriel's heart broke. "Biology doesn't make someone your father, Tommy. Love does. And I love you more than anything in the world. But I have other parents." "Yes, buddy. People who loved you and looked for you every single day since you disappeared." Tommy was quiet for a long moment. "Do they love me as much as you do?" "I think they do." "Then I guess I'm pretty lucky. Not every kid gets to have so many people love them." Gabriel had to fight back tears at the child's simple wisdom. Detective Santos stood up. "Gabriel, there's someone here who wants to meet you." She opened the door, and Stan Hawkins walked in, looking older than his years but relieved. "I never properly thanked you," Stan said, extending his hand. "What you did today, it took real courage. You're the one who saved us. If you hadn't recognized Charlotte, if you hadn't trusted me and acted on that recognition, Charlotte and Douglas would have disappeared again, and we'd still be hunting them 15 years from now." Stan pulled up a chair. "I've been working this case since I was a young detective. I've seen what they do to families, to children. Today, we finally stopped them. What about their network? Are there more children out there?" "Douglas is giving us names, locations, everything he knows. We've already executed raids in 4 cities and recovered 6 children." Stan's smile was grim but satisfied. "It's going to take time, but we're going to bring them all home." Gabriel looked down at Tommy, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. "What happens now?" "Now," Detective Santos said, "we focus on healing. All of us." Chapter 9. New Beginnings. 6 months later, Gabriel stood in the backyard of his new house, a smaller place across town, far from the memories of his old neighborhood. The moving boxes were finally unpacked, and the yard was starting to look like home. "Dad, can you help me with this?" Tommy called from the garden, where he was struggling to plant tomatoes in the raised bed they'd built together. Gabriel smiled and walked over. Dad had stuck, even after Tommy, Michael, had been reunited with his biological parents, David and Sarah Patterson. The transition had been difficult for everyone involved, but the counseling had helped, and gradually, an unconventional family structure had emerged. Tommy spent weekdays with the Pattersons, getting to know his birth parents and younger sister who had been born after his disappearance. But weekends were Gabriel's, and during the summer, they split time more evenly. "How are those tomatoes coming along?" Gabriel asked, kneeling beside his son. "Good. Sarah taught me how to tie them to stakes so they don't fall over." Tommy had started calling his birth mother by her first name, while Gabriel remained Dad, a compromise that worked for everyone. "She said we can make salsa when they're ripe." "That sounds perfect." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Gabriel marveling at how resilient children could be. Tommy still had nightmares sometimes, and there were triggers that sent him into panic attacks. But with therapy and the love of multiple families, he was healing. "Dad," Tommy said suddenly, "do you think Charlotte is ever going to get out of prison?" Gabriel had been dreading this question. "No, buddy. She's going to stay in prison for the rest of her life." "Good." Tommy's voice was matter-of-fact. "I know I'm supposed to forgive people, but she hurt a lot of kids. She would have hurt me too if you hadn't saved me. You don't have to forgive her if you're not ready. Maybe someday you will, maybe you won't. Either way is okay." Tommy nodded thoughtfully, then went back to his planting. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text from Stan Hawkins. "Good news. We found the Martinez boy in Phoenix. That makes 12 children recovered. Charlotte's network is finished." Gabriel smiled. The investigation had uncovered a trafficking operation that spanned multiple states and had been operating for over 20 years. Dozens of arrests had been made, and children who had been missing for years were finally going home. Another text, this one from Detective Santos. "Thought you'd want to know, Douglas Burton died in prison last week. Apparent suicide. Justice served." Gabriel deleted the text without telling Tommy. The boy didn't need to know about Douglas's fate. Some information was for adults to carry. "Dad, there's a car in the driveway," Tommy said, looking toward the front of the house. Gabriel stood and saw David Patterson's familiar SUV pulling in. Through the windshield, he could see David, Sarah, and Tommy's little sister Emma. "Looks like your other family is here for dinner," Gabriel said. Tommy dropped his trowel and ran toward the house, excited to see his sister. Gabriel followed more slowly, still amazed by how well this unconventional arrangement was working. David met him at the front door. "How was his week?" he asked, their standard greeting. "Good. No nightmares. Good appetite. Finished his summer reading." Gabriel handed over Tommy's backpack. "How are you guys holding up?" "Better," Sarah said, giving Gabriel a quick hug. She'd been suspicious of him at first, unable to understand why her son was so attached to a man who wasn't his biological father. But gradually, she'd come to see that Gabriel's love for Tommy was genuine and healing. Emma's been asking about her big brother all week. They gathered around Gabriel's dining room table, an odd family portrait, but a loving one. Tommy chattered about his week while Emma listened with wide-eyed adoration. David and Sarah updated Gabriel on their own healing process, the support groups they joined for families of trafficking victims. After dinner, as the Pattersons prepared to leave, Tommy hugged Gabriel tightly. "I'll see you Friday for our camping trip, right?" Tommy asked. "Wouldn't miss it. And next summer, when I'm older, maybe David and Sarah can come too? And Emma?" Gabriel looked at the Pattersons, who nodded. "I think that sounds like a great idea." As they drove away, Gabriel waved from the front porch, then went back inside to clean up the dinner dishes. The house felt quiet now, but not empty. Tommy's artwork covered the refrigerator. His books were scattered around the living room. His laughter still echoed in the rooms. Gabriel had lost the life he thought he wanted, the perfect marriage, the traditional family, the suburban dream. But what he gained was something far more precious, the knowledge that love wasn't about biology or legal documents or social conventions. Love was about showing up, protecting those who needed protection, and choosing every day to be the person a child could trust. His phone rang. "Stan Hawkins." "Gabriel, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to let you know that Maria Santos and I are retiring from consulting work. We're too old for this. You've earned the rest." "Maybe, but there's something else. The FBI wants to know if you'd be interested in working with them on cybercrime cases involving children. Your tech background combined with your experience with this case. They think you could help a lot of kids." Gabriel looked around his quiet house, thinking about Tommy and all the other children still out there who needed someone to fight for them. Tell them yes, Gabriel said. Definitely yes. Outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere across town, Tommy was probably helping Sarah tuck Emma into bed, reading her a story in that patient voice that reminded Gabriel every day that goodness could triumph over evil. Gabriel had learned that family wasn't something you were born into. It was something you chose, something you fought for, something you protected with everything you had. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got to do it twice. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.